I've been a Pokemon fan for 13 years now, ever since the release of Pokemon Black and White back in 2011. As a kid experiencing the world of Pokemon for the first time, it was easy to fall in love with the magic of the franchise, through the trading cards, anime, or most importantly to me, the video games. After experiencing Black and White for the first time, I went back and played through the previous games I had missed, and eagerly awaited the new games, each release being like an event for me. It really was a journey, but now, 13 years later, as someone who has recently entered into his 20s, the magic has finally worn off and the journey appears to be over. This video isn't meant to be an overview of my time with the Pokemon franchise or anything like that, but I'd like to touch on it a bit before I actually start talking about Scarlet and Violet properly. Like I said before, my first Pokemon games were Black and White back on the DS. In my opinion, the DS era of Pokemon is by far its greatest, with Generations 4 and 5 being my favorites. Because of this, my nostalgia for Black and White, Heart Gold Soul Silver, and Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum is insane. I really love everything about those games, especially Platinum. I look back at this era of my once favorite game franchise super fondly. I can't even deny that my positive feelings towards certain aspects of the franchise and its current state could very well be driven by nostalgia alone. Despite my great memories with Pokemon, these days they're just that, memories. Whether you're a Pokemon fan like me or you've come to hate the franchise over the years, it's sadly undeniable that there has been a severe dip in quality of the recent titles that we've gotten over the last few years. In my opinion, this downgrade in quality started with Generation 7. Words cannot describe my hatred for Generation 7, but I'll try to put that hatred aside while I complain about a different Pokemon game. Here's why Pokemon Scarlet and Violet ended up disappointing me. Before I get too far into it, I just want to say that I have not played Scarlet and Violet to completion. I have, however, played around 35 hours of it. Depending on the person, you might not think that's enough time to pass judgment on a game, and I get that. After all, I didn't even finish it. For me, depending on the game, I think 35 hours is a decent amount of time spent on it, and I should hopefully have enough time in the game now to be able to form some opinions about it. If this was a formal review, I think it would be a different story, and that I should have at the very least completed the main story of the game if that's what I was going for, but I'm kind of just talking about my thoughts here. As you could probably tell by now, I did not enjoy my time with Scarlet and Violet. Not much anyway. As it stands right now, these are the only Pokemon games that I haven't finished, and that includes Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, my most hated Pokemon games of all time. Despite my hatred for the Ultra games, I believe that Scarlet and Violet are worse games. In my opinion, Scarlet and Violet are actually worse than Sword and Shield. I know that's a pretty wild take, but that's just how I feel about things. And if you're watching this thinking I'm totally wrong and you ended up loving Scarlet and Violet, I truly envy you. I wanted to like these games so much, so if you do, please don't let my complaining or anyone else's ruin that fun for you. At the end of the day, anyone who's playing these games are probably Pokemon fans, and we all want these games to be good. While I do believe that a lot of the more modern Pokemon games lack the magic that many of the classics had, there's one outlier in my mind, and that's Pokemon Legends Arceus. Many people have their problems with Legends, and yeah, the game definitely isn't perfect, but in my opinion, it's easily the best Pokemon game to come out since Gen 6. I freaked out when Legends Arceus was announced. It seemed like it was going to be the game that myself and many other Pokemon fans had been waiting for their whole lives, and I think for me it kind of was that. The Legends formula seems like the first real evolution that Pokemon games have had in years. I feel like it recaptures a lot of the magic that Pokemon as a whole so obviously should have in its games. So why am I talking about Legends Arceus when I should be talking about Scarlet and Violet? It's because shortly after the release of Legends Arceus, on Pokemon Day of 2022, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet were announced, and I wasn't impressed. These games were claiming to be the first truly open-world Pokemon games, so I should have been excited. I love open-world games, and I had been waiting for the series to go open-world for a few years now. Even though I knew all of this, I just wasn't feeling it. The trailer didn't really do anything for me, but all I seemed to be hearing was about how great the new Pokemon games looked. Even a few of my friends who don't like Pokemon were saying that the games looked good and that they seemed like they were going to be a huge improvement over Legends Arceus. But I just didn't see it. Visually, I never really liked the way Scarlet and Violet looked. Maybe it's mostly an art style thing, but I don't think Scarlet and Violet look graphically good at all either. Definitely worse than Legends Arceus in my opinion. I know that a lot of people had problems with Legends Arceus graphics, but I personally thought the game looked pretty good. Not amazing or anything, but not nearly as bad as many people were making it out to be. I also seriously prefer the art style of Legends Arceus to that of Scarlet and Violet. Just as an aside, I find it odd that the art styles switch from game to game when it comes to more modern Pokemon games. It makes me feel like the games have a real lack of identity. Yeah, the classic games changed up their looks slightly between each major generational leap, but the art style still remained relatively consistent. Games in the same generation even had the same exact art style. Compare that to the inconsistent art style of Gen 8. It's hard to tell that Sword and Shield and BDSP are even part of the same generation. I definitely don't want every Pokemon game to look exactly the same, but I'd love it if the series had an art style that gave it some sort of unique identity. It seems like every generation the art style goes through pretty dramatic changes, whether it be inconsistent heights for the character models or strange facial changes to the models for no real reason. Many of the modern Pokemon games just end up looking like generic anime to me most of the time now. If they were trying to copy the art style of the anime, that would be one thing, but they really aren't. I thought that the Legends art style, and weirdly enough the Let's Go art style, were the best looking, and they felt the most Pokemon to me. Anyway, as more time passed and more news on Scarlet and Violet was announced, I still didn't find myself getting any more excited about the game's release. I thought most of the new Pokemon designs were really good, and a lot of the stuff the trailers were promising, like the 3 different stories and the fact that you could challenge the gym leaders in any order, looked really cool. But for every piece of news that excited me, there was another bit of info that left me dissatisfied. I thought the whole concept of terastallizing and being able to change a Pokemon's type was really great, but I felt that the design ended up being kinda underwhelming, and the execution of the whole idea was far from ideal. I'm still upset they got rid of Mega Evolution. Also, Team Star as a whole really bothered me, since I never liked the idea of the more goofy and unintimidating evil teams, and by now I've grown super tired of it, honestly. It was only the very last trailer that dropped right before the game's release that I started to get a little bit excited. They showed off a lot more about the games, including the past and future variants of certain Pokemon, confirming some leaks that I've been keeping my eye on. I was probably going to end up getting the game regardless, but this finally got me a little excited for the new Pokemon game, only a few weeks before its launch. So that decided it. I pre-ordered my copy of Scarlet, picked it up at release, and started my journey through the Paldea region. And damn, was I underwhelmed. I always get really excited whenever a new Pokemon game comes out. Playing the first few hours of the new game seems to bring back the magic that the older games had for me. But in this case, it was only the first few minutes of Pokémon Scarlet that made me feel that way. The game's opening cutscene was definitely a bit rough around the edges, but it did a great job of getting me excited for the adventure I was about to embark on. It also made it seem like there was a lot of effort that Game Freak put into the game, something that I and many others feel have been lacking in Pokemon games for a while now. Even after that cutscene played, I just took my time wandering around the player's house thinking to myself, wow, the 9th generation of Pokemon really is here. And that was pretty much it. The first step I took out of the player's house was also where any feeling of classic Pokemon magic I was getting from Scarlet seemed to die. Stepping out into the open world really makes it obvious how rough a state the game was actually in. I still didn't like how the game looked, but more importantly, the game ran like dog shit. The frame rate was ridiculously bad, and there was barely even anything happening on the screen at the time. I was just walking over to the rival character's house with the 3 starters wandering around near me. As far as I could tell, this is a completely isolated part of the game too. No wild Pokemon can spawn on the way from the player's house to the rival's house, and there are like 3 NPCs around. Yeah, the 3 starters were running around with the player, but if the developers were going to choose to include that in the opening part of the game, they should have made sure that it actually worked. It's just 3 little Pokemon anyway, it shouldn't be putting that much of a strain on the game's performance. I remember noticing that the pop-in was pretty bad here too, but given the recent Pokemon games on Switch, I was kind of already expecting that. But it's not like that expectation excuses the actual problem. Despite all the negative stuff I've been saying so far, there are some things that I think Scarlet and Violet actually did right, and I think it would be wrong if I didn't talk about that a little bit. The Paldea region being the first truly open world that a Pokemon game has ever had is definitely worth mentioning. It's ambitious when any long-time series takes a shot at making an open world, and this is no different. I think the game is at its best when you're just wandering around the open world at your own pace, letting yourself get distracted by whatever catches your eye and catching every new Pokemon you come across. Exploration and freedom are the main selling points of any open world game, and it goes together really well with the core concept of Pokemon. It's much easier to want to actually catch them all when you can see the Pokemon right in front of you and actively decide whether or not you want to interact with it. And while it definitely isn't a lot of them, a few of the new Pokemon designs are really cool too. Like, come on, Paldean, Wooper, and Clodsire? Just look at them. It's amazing. Most of the gym challenges that I played were pretty fun too. They made me feel like they took the puzzles from some of the better gyms in old Pokemon games and just expanded on their scale. I also think that the concept of having 3 main story paths to tackle in any order you want is a great idea, even if its execution was pretty lackluster, but I'll go into more detail about that later. And of course, just like all the other Pokemon games, the music goes hard too. Sadly, those are just about all the nice things I have to say about Scarlet and Violet. Even though there is stuff worth praising here, it just isn't enough to excuse the lackluster package as a whole, and the issues that I mentioned before just make me feel like these games are incredibly low effort. So, why is it that I feel this way? Well, I think the main reason is the terrible performance. There's legitimately no excuse for how poorly these games run. Like I said before, even when there really isn't anything going on, the frame rate is still really bad. This obviously makes it hard to get immersed in the game and actually enjoy playing it. People, Pokemon, and even pieces of the environment like trees and rocks all suffer from serious pop-in problems as well. It honestly feels like a step back from how the pop-in was in games like Legend Arceus. There isn't even an effort to hide it here. You could be walking around and then just a few steps ahead of you, a Lechonk will appear out of nowhere. Oh my god. I feel like I have a pretty high tolerance for stuff like this most of the time, so if it was bad even for me, it really says something about the sorry state that these games are in. I still remember one of the first trailers I saw for Scarlet and Violet that showed off a bit of Artisan, one of the first towns you would probably end up going to in the game. There were two things in this trailer that worried me when I first saw it. One of them was the kind of choppy movements of the windmill in the town, but the second thing I noticed seemed like it would be an even bigger problem. It had to do with the town's gym challenge. The challenge had the players seeking out Sunflora, hiding around the town, and bringing them back to the gym. It was a really fun idea and concept, but any fun you could have gotten out of it while actually playing was completely ruined by the effect the Sunflora following the player had on the game's performance. Looking back at the trailer now, these problems don't even seem that bad, but when I finally ended up playing the game and made my way to Artisan, both of these issues were somehow way worse than in the early trailer. From far away, the windmill looked like it was moving in slow motion. Of course, it would gradually start to look better the closer you got to it, but even within the town, its movements still looked choppy. While playing, I could ignore the windmill, but not the Sunflora. All the Sunflora running around on screen at once caused the frame rate to fucking tank. Walking around with all those little bastards made the frame rate drop so bad, that part of the game was practically unplayable for me. It's really a shame too, because without those frame rate issues, I know I would have enjoyed that gym challenge. On top of the awful frame rate and pop-in problems I just mentioned, there are also an insane amount of glitches plaguing this game. A quick Google search or a look on Twitter would show you a bunch of them. It was all I've seen about the game when it first came out. These glitches could be distracting at best and game-breaking at worst. Nintendo actually ended up apologizing for the piss-poor state that Scarlet and Violet launched in, and they assured fans that they took the criticisms of the games very seriously and were working on fixing things. But even so, the game is still seriously lacking when it comes to its performance. The game still has bad frame rate and pop-in issues, and it honestly doesn't seem to be in a much better state than it was at launch. Look, I get it. There's no denying the fact that the Switch is aging. It's 7 years old already. It just can't keep up with current gen systems like the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. But even so, many developers continue to put quality titles on the system that look, play, and run leagues better than Scarlet and Violet do. Take Breath of the Wild for example. The game looks infinitely better, has a bigger world, has way more going on, and still manages to run really well in most cases. And it came out 5 years earlier than Scarlet and Violet. It's not a Switch issue this time. Scarlet and Violet are simply unpolished and unoptimized. So how did the games even end up this way? I mean, anyone who watches videos about the state of Pokemon games today already knows that Pokemon is the most profitable media franchise in the world. Surely this means that there should be an insane amount of money that can be thrown into making these games the best they can be, right? Well, you'd think so, but with the low quality games we've been receiving lately, it's honestly hard to say for sure. Some people will blame Game Freak, the developers of most mainline Pokemon games, considering them to be lazy and untalented. Others blame Nintendo and the Pokemon Company as a whole for forcing them to pump these games out every year, and not giving them enough time or resources to create the quality product that the developers might actually want to make. The truth is, we'll never really know for sure what the actual reason is for how these games turned out, but we can speculate. In my opinion, it's probably a bit of both. I personally believe that Game Freak is still not suited to developing 3D games, even 10 years after the debut of their first 3D games, Pokémon X and Y. The shift to 3D was a bit of an awkward one for the Pokemon franchise. I never really had a problem with X and Y, they definitely aren't my favorite Pokemon games, but I don't hate them or anything. The fact is that Pokemon's initial move to 3D felt more like a half step than anything else. Little improvements were made here and there throughout the 10 years that Pokemon has been developing games in a 3D space, but many of the problems that popped up during the franchise's shift to 3D still exist today. Low quality animations as well as stiff, lifeless Pokemon models are still some of the biggest problems fans have with the more recent games. While I do believe that some of the blame falls on Game Freak, I think a bigger portion of it falls on the Pokemon Company as a whole. For those who don't know, Pokemon is a multimedia franchise owned by 3 companies, Game Freak, Creatures, and Nintendo, which make up the Pokemon Company. The fact that Pokemon is a multimedia franchise means that the video games are not the only aspect of Pokemon that's going to be focused on. The Pokemon Company also has the anime, the TCG, and the merchandise to worry about. While I believe that the video games should be the main focus of the franchise, acting as a central pillar to support everything else, it realistically isn't the case. The Pokemon Company wants to coordinate the release of its games with its merchandise, with its anime, and with its trading cards. This is non-negotiable for them. This brings me to the main point of this whole tangent. There is simply not enough time given to Game Freak by the Pokemon Company to develop console-quality, 3D video games of such a huge scale. The devs don't have time to be ambitious or do something new and different with the franchise because of this. Pokemon games absolutely have to come out once a year, in November, also they can capitalize on the boosted sales of a holiday release schedule. Even when there isn't a huge main release, there's always something, whether it be DLC for an existing game or something a little more unexpected like the Let's Go games. Hell, there were 2 mainline Pokemon games that came out in 2022 alone. BDSP and Legends Arceus released within 2 months of each other. Game Freak didn't even develop BDSP, they had to outsource that one to Ilka, and it still wasn't good. Game Freak is clearly stretched way too thin. They're already a small dev team, and they're usually splitting their team in half to work on 2 games at the same time, both of which usually come out undercooked. But you know what the worst part about all of this is? It's that it doesn't even matter. Before the release of Tears of the Kingdom, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet were the fastest selling Nintendo games of all time. Not the fastest selling Pokemon games, the fastest selling Nintendo games. Tears of the Kingdom had a launch that was just as successful as Scarlet and Violet's. Both games sold around 10 million copies within their first 3 days of release. Even if Scarlet and Violet aren't the fastest selling Nintendo games anymore, the fact that they managed to hold that title at all while being in such a rough state at launch is pretty crazy. This release schedule might work for them now, but eventually people are going to get tired of it. A lot of people already are. Having a Pokemon game come out once every year makes them feel way less special than they should. Nobody likes waiting too long for a game, but that wait usually ends up feeling worth it when you finally get your hands on the game. Having to wait for a game to come out gives players time to build up their excitement for the game. Mainline Pokemon releases used to feel like events, but now they just feel like a yearly inevitability more than anything else. Now more than ever, it seems like it would be very easy to get burnt out on Pokemon. Now to get back on track, I'm going to talk about what I personally didn't like about Scarlet and Violet. This section is going to be mostly subjective and focus more on what ultimately got me to drop the game. Things like what I found to be weird design choices, good ideas ruined by poor execution, and blatant laziness. I'll try not to repeat what I said earlier about bugs and glitches too much, but that will probably end up getting mentioned here and there just because of how prevalent the issues are. Firstly, I want to talk about a few of the smaller issues I have with the game. These problems aren't nearly as big of a deal as the other ones that I'll mention in a bit, but they still really ended up bothering me. Let's take a look at how you move around the school for a second. That seems like it would be pretty important. The school is the main driving force of the story after all, and it acts like a sort of central hub that you can come back to in between your adventures to hang out and do some side activities in. So what's it like to move around the school in this open world video game? Terrible. It's awful. You don't actually get to traverse the school at all. There's no atmosphere to take in walking through the halls and exploring because there isn't anything to actually explore. You go from room to room in this academy by opening up a menu and choosing where you want to go. This is so lazy, it's actually insane to me. What other game releasing these days would ever do something like that? It's just awful. I've got the same problem with how they handle pretty much all the buildings in the game too. You just can't go into them. There aren't any modeled interiors. There's like 2 building types that you can enter, and the interiors are all copy and pasted throughout the region. These buildings being some of the sandwich shops and the gym buildings. And sometimes when going into some of the sandwich shops, you don't even actually get to see the inside, it just opens up a shitty little menu. There are just so many cut corners here, it's so low effort. Also, the customization in this game fucking sucks. There are like 4 outfits you can wear. Anyway, it's time to move on to a bigger problem. In my opinion, I believe that the absence of any significant side quests in this open world RPG is a huge missed opportunity. One of my favorite things about Legends Arceus was all the different side quests that the player could take on throughout the game. The side quests weren't anything too crazy or groundbreaking, just fun little side activities you could do when you don't feel like moving on to the next area right away. A simple task like going out and catching a specific Pokemon for someone in Jubilife Village was a great start for side quests in Pokemon games. Being able to bring the villagers Pokemon to help with their problems, and then being able to actually see the results of your actions was really cool. So obviously, the natural progression of this is to get rid of the side quests entirely, right? In modern gaming, most RPGs, especially the more open-ended ones, are full of interesting side quests to distract you from the main story and enhance your experience within the game. I don't think it's too much to ask to have actual side quests in my Pokemon game. They've already done it and it was great. Why get rid of them in a game that could potentially benefit even more from it due to its even more open-ended structure than the game that they were actually included in? Instead of ripping all the side content away from the games, they should have actually brought over the same kind of ideas they had in Legends Arceus and just improved upon them and added more for Scarlet and Violet. I thought those little time trial balloon popping things you could do when racing around on Ride Pokemon in Legends Arceus were so much fun. So why, in a game where your main method of traversal is riding around on your stupid bike legendary, is there nothing like that in the world of Scarlet and Violet? Seriously, what side activities are there to do in Scarlet and Violet? Make sandwiches? Fuck off. This next thing, while definitely a lot more subjective, is still a big problem for me. Personally, I find a lot of the new Pokemon designs here to be just awful. I believe there's been a steady decline in the quality of new Pokemon designs ever since X and Y, and I think this is the peak of that. There are always good designs in a new generation, but I think the majority of them here are just bad. And it's so weird too, because before the games released, I thought all the new Pokemon they showed off were really cool and that they had some of the best designs that I'd seen in years. Then I realized, oh yeah, they're just showing off the best ones. Like I said, there are definitely some new Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet that I love. The Paldean Wooper line, Wiglet, Cerulege, Palmy, and the Tandemaus line are a few of my favorites. The starters too. When they were first revealed, I had a really hard time deciding which one to pick because of how much I liked them all. But man, what the fuck did they do to their evolutions? I'm mainly talking about Sprigatito and Quaxly here. Their final two stages don't even look like official Pokemon, they look fan-made. And even though I like the way the Fuecoco line turned out better, I can't deny that Crocolore and Skeledirge look goofy as hell. But I feel like for every new design I do like, there are two more that I can't stand. The entire Smoliv line bothers me, Maschiff and its evolution look disgusting, I don't really like any of the new regional bugs, and Bramblin is literally just a tumbleweed. But these designs aren't nearly as bad as the worst offender of them all. Pokemon number 1000, Goldengo. This thing is disgusting. I really just don't even know what else to say about it. It's gross. I legitimately think that this is the worst Pokemon design ever. Anyway, I guess the main thing that stood out to me as something that really worked against the game was the absence of level scaling. I love that these games give you the freedom to take on the gyms in any order you want. It's something that I've been hoping would be included in a Pokemon game for a long time now. With Scarlet and Violet being completely open world, it's great to have that kind of freedom. You can really go wherever you want, whenever you want, and battle any gym leader that you come across. But the problem with this is that the levels of wild Pokemon, trainers, and even the gym leaders themselves don't scale with the level of the player's party of Pokemon. This made pretty much anything I did in the game way too easy. Easier than any of the more recent mainline games, which is definitely saying something. I feel like the lack of level scaling clashes with the open world design of the game. In a way, the player is almost punished for engaging with the open world by not being able to have a more balanced experience. I'll give you the start of my journey in Paldea as an example. After getting full access to the open world, I ended up taking on the Grass-type gym leader first. I assumed that he was the first gym leader because of the low levels of his Pokemon. My Pokemon were around 5 to 10 levels ahead of his because of how much time I spent just screwing around in the open world, and the fact that I took down one of the Titan Pokemon not too long before challenging him. Needless to say, bro didn't stand a chance. After beating him, I decided to go back to Mesagosa, the town with the school in it, and head in the opposite direction that I already took so I could experience more of the open world. I stumbled upon my second town while I was heading this way, and ended up fighting the Bug-type gym leader, and her Pokemon were even weaker than the Grass-type leaders. This made me realize that she was very clearly meant to be the first gym leader, and I ended up kicking her ass in battle too. This led me to creating multiple different teams for the adventure, switching them out whenever some Pokemon got way too strong, which happened very often. This might be fun for some people, but for me it was too much micromanaging. It's cool to get to use different Pokemon on your team at different times, but I prefer to use my favorites when I can. And the way this game was designed didn't really give me the option to play the way I wanted to, at least not without having an absurdly overpowered team. If level scaling was implemented into the game, this problem wouldn't really exist. I could still take on the gyms in any order I wanted, but they would actually offer a challenging battle. Like, why couldn't they have given gym leaders a few different teams to fight the trainer with, depending on how many badges they've already earned? That would be a lot of fun. And while we're on the topic of gym leaders, I feel like them and many of the other characters in the game were overall just really forgettable. I've been feeling that way with most of the modern Pokemon games, but I've never felt it as hard as in Scarlet and Violet. But this is probably because I have a much stronger connection to the older games that I played as a child, so it makes sense that the characters in those games would be more memorable for me. I honestly can't even remember the names of any of the gym leaders I fought. Not even the funny streamer one. There weren't really any characters I particularly enjoyed interacting with either. Nemona was probably the character I had the most fun seeing on screen, but even then, she wasn't anything special as far as rivals go, she was just okay. I didn't really care about Arven and Penny at all either. I thought having 3 independent stories focusing on each of the 3 rivals that you could complete in any order you wanted to was a really cool idea at first, but just like many other aspects of the game, the execution ended up falling flat. Though to be fair, I've heard that Arven's story gets way better as the game progresses, and that all 3 stories come together in a really satisfying way at the end of the game. It's totally possible that I just didn't spend enough time with Scarlet and Violet's characters to truly enjoy them. Having a lot of things to do other than the gym challenge is a good thing in Pokemon games. Obviously, I like to have more content to play through. Scarlet and Violet have 3 different stories that make up the core experience. The first is the gym challenge, which we're all familiar with. The second has to do with Arven and battling Titan Pokemon around the region. The third focuses on defeating the evil team of Scarlet and Violet, Team Star. I've got a lot of hatred in my heart for Team Star and that part of the story, so I'll save that for a bit later. So, Titan Pokemon. I know I'm repeating myself, but here's another great idea that gets brought down by shitty execution. Titan Pokemon share a lot in common with Alpha Pokemon from Legends Arceus. They're bigger, stronger versions of regular Pokemon you might encounter on your travels. A few of the Titans are just bigger Pokemon, like our good buddy Cloth, but others are Paradox Pokemon, dope new variants of pre-existing Pokemon. These Pokemon have either prehistoric or futuristic qualities to their designs depending on whether you're playing Scarlet or Violet, and that is such a good idea. Look at Great Tusk, Scarlet's Paradox Donphan. It's so cool. Wait, I thought I didn't like this game. Unlike Alpha Pokemon, Titan Pokemon are fixed spawns, and they feel like a bigger event, maybe more similar to the Warden Pokemon instead. These should have been great, but somehow they ended up feeling super low effort and just kind of boring. The only Titan I got around to fighting was Cloth, and I was extremely underwhelmed by that battle. I just kind of stumbled into it while I was on my way to the Grass-type gym leader's town. A mid-cutscene played and the battle was on. I sent out my beloved Wiglet, and he one-shot it? But not to worry, because there's a second phase. Cloth ate the Herba Mystica, the ultimate sandwich ingredient, and now he's ready for round 2. I send out my handsome little Wiglet again, and another one-shot? This was just lame. I might be wrong, but I don't remember the Titan's level being visible during battle. After I looked it up, I found out that Titan Cloth is set at level 16. My Wiglet was only around 5 levels higher. There was no way that he should have been one-shotting this giant crab. Again, this problem could have been solved with level scaling. It would have made the fight actually feel like a challenge, like it should have. But I guess I've already bitched about this enough. And yeah, I get it. Pokemon is, at the end of the day, marketed towards kids. 20-year-old dorks like me aren't the target demographic. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to cry about it. Don't tell me that a lot of the battles from the DS era didn't pose a challenge. Lance? Red? Cynthia? Those were hard fucking battles. Or maybe I was just 8 when I fought them. Whatever. In my opinion, Titan battles ended up being lame. But that missed opportunity is nothing compared to the actual physical pain that I felt while fighting Team Star in their part of the story. Team Star sucks. I am so tired of the uninteresting, unambitious, and unintimidating evil teams that we've been stuck with for the past few generations. I didn't like it when Team Skull did it, I didn't like it when Team Yell did it, and I still don't like it now that Team Star is doing it. So what's Team Star's goal? Do they want to use Pokemon to create an unstoppable criminal enterprise like Team Rocket? Or maybe their ambitions are even loftier, and they want to create a whole new world like Team Galactic? Nah, they're the fucking school bullies. These dorks are the school bullies? But they look stupid. Now I know people are going to be saying, oh, that's not fair, the evil teams were always kind of goofy and not meant to be taken too seriously. And fine, I could see where you're coming from. Yeah, many of the random members of the old evil teams that you would come across were goons, but those were just grunts, they were meant to be goons. Think about the bigger picture, the plans that some of these evil teams were scheming up in their nefarious little minds. Team Aqua wanted to flood the entire world. No more land. And like I said before, Team Galactic wanted to create a whole new world. What does Team Star want to do? Oh, I don't know, maybe set up a few roadblocks and cut a few of their classes. I hate them. They just make me sad. Evil teams can be so much more than this. My first battle against one of Team Star's squads was also my last battle in the entire game. I pulled up to the Fire Squad's base and faced off against their leader, who had the insane stompers by the way. But of course, there has to be a fun new spin on how we handle this battle. In order to take on the entire goon squad that calls this base home, we have to make use of the new Let's Go mechanic. It's auto-battling. I stand there and let 3 of my Pokemon beat the shit out of Team Star all by themselves. I just watch. Sometimes I walk. Yeah, I'm sure it's a big surprise that I don't like the Let's Go mechanic on its own, but being forced to use it in this specific situation really bothers me. After taking out like 30 Team Star douchebags, Stompers finally shows her face. At least now it's an actual battle. Against a car. A whole ass truck. Oh, but just the engine is the actual Pokemon, not the whole car. Somehow, after handling everything else the game has thrown at me with ease, the Starmobile nearly party-wiped me. Luckily for me, I made a comeback. I used a revive on my best friend Wiglet and I beat Team Star. Then I turned off the game. And I haven't turned it on since. Despite all this, I am still a Pokemon fan. And honestly, I think I always will be. No matter how badly I get burned by the newer games, I don't think that's going to change. At least it hasn't yet. Pokemon will always hold a special place in my heart. Many Pokemon games are still some of my favorite games of all time. I think there's a difference between being a fan of something and condoning how something is being handled. Because I definitely don't condone this. I don't condone how little time these games get for development, and I don't enjoy playing through half-baked releases in a series of games that I know deserves better. Since Scarlet and Violet's release, 2 DLC expansions have come out for the game, and a new Legends game has been announced as well. I personally didn't buy the DLC for Scarlet and Violet because I didn't want to support the game any further than I already had. Although I didn't play either DLC myself, from what I've seen, while both Part 1 and Part 2 of the expansion have some fun and creative ideas, they still have many of the same issues that the base game had, including the poor performance and optimization. Many people believe that behind all the technical issues Scarlet and Violet have, there is a genuinely good game, and that's a perfectly valid opinion to have. but for me, I just don't see it. I feel like the games are fundamentally flawed, and no amount of additional polish can change the fact that these games just didn't do it for me. For years now, it's been said that each new Pokemon game that releases is simply a step in the right direction for the series, but it's time for something more than that. And while I know this video has been mainly negative, the future does seem a bit brighter for Pokemon games. Pokemon Legends Arceus was a bold new take on the classic Pokemon formula, and I believe that the Legends series is the key to the evolution of Pokemon games going forward. The announcement of Pokemon Legends ZA has me incredibly excited for what the future holds, even if I do have to remind myself to manage my expectations every now and then. Above all else, I'm happy to see that it seems like the Pokemon Company is beginning to understand why their games have been negatively received lately despite their financial success. Pokemon Legends ZA is currently set to release sometime in 2025, and that's a big deal. They're actually taking the time to polish the game and ensure that it's truly ready for when it releases, instead of rushing it out for the holiday season. That makes me really happy. But no matter what happens in the future, I can always look back fondly on the past. I can look back at all the great memories I've made with the games, anime, trading cards, and all the friendships I've formed with other fans along the way. Yes, I do hate Scarlet and Violet. As it stands right now, they are without a doubt my least favorite games in the franchise. But this is a hatred born from love for the series. I don't like to feel this way about Pokemon. It's just so sad to see Pokemon games come out in this kind of state, and it hurts that I can't enjoy them like I used to. If you like Scarlet and Violet, I'm genuinely happy for you. Don't let me or anybody else ruin that for you. Even though I think that Scarlet and Violet are the lowest point in the series, Pokemon will always be important to me. With the proper amount of time and care put into the games, I'm sure that they can once again begin to live up to the expectations that I have for them. I hope that the future brings more Pokemon games that I can truly enjoy playing through, and maybe they can even manage to recapture some of the magic that has been lost to me throughout the years.